Okay, good evening, everyone. Madam Clerk, would you call the roll, please?
Council President Robert J. Sylvia,
Here.
Vice President Paul M. Rodrick,
Here.
Councilor Terry Flynn,
Here.
Councilor M. Teresa Santos,
Here.
Councilor Dennis B. Toronto,
Here.
Councilor Barbara A. Bonvillis,
Here.
Councilor Thomas P. Welch III.
Here.
We have a quorum, Mr. President.
Okay, thank you, Madam Clerk. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in the pledge of allegiance to our flag. I pledge allegiance
To the flag, United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and
liberty and justice for all. Okay, thank you. Okay, pursuant to provisions of Article 2, Section 203 of the Town Charter, in accordance with Sections 42, 46.2, 42, 46.3, 42, 46.4, 42, 46.5, and 42, 46.6, Rhode Island General Law, I hereby call a special meeting of the Town Council to formally consider, discuss, and vote upon the following items of business. Item number 1, memorandum from Francis Spinella, FJS Associates, RE, report on senior housing. Council will receive the memorandum, discuss, and vote on the senior affordable housing priorities. We have about 6 people that want to speak. And I think so. I think we'll start off with give them a little extra time since there's 6 of them. If they want to go up to 5 minutes, we'll give them 5 minutes. It's certainly something that we've had in the pipeline for a long time. Mr. Vice President.
motion to receive said memorandum and begin discussion.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion second to receive. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, Frank, you want to start us off?
Good evening, Mr. President, members of the council. Nice to see you all again. I think at the last time we went through the memorandum, I don't know if you'd like me to go through it again, but I was thinking I'd jump right into the meat of what we were discussing last time, if that's okay with you.
Does any councilors want to go through the whole thing again? Are they prepared and ready to get into the meat? Okay, Frank, go right ahead. And if they have any questions after, I'm sure there's going to be a lot.
Yeah.
And, you're here to field the questions.
So the first thing I'd like to do is talk about the funding programs that are out there, because I think that I could tell when I was getting into the financing side, people's eyes were glazing over. It's such a niche business that I sometimes get ahead of myself, and I apologize for that. But so tax credits are the low-income housing tax credits are the primary funding source for building of affordable housing. And these developments are primarily funded by the sale of low-income housing tax credits throughout the country. Each state gets an allotment, and Rhode Island gets about $3.5 million a year in credits. And that credit is a 10-year credit. So 3.5 million turns into 35 million over the 10 years. The problem is when you're building housing, we need the cash up front. So if you just assume like this development, or let's just take a simpler number. Let's say it's $1 million we need, and we have $100,000 in credit. We sell that for 10 years to the investor, to an investor, and I'll get into the format of the partnerships. But this investor takes the credit over those 10 years, but we get the cash up front at a discounted rate, somewhere between, in today's market, it's 88 to 93 cents on every dollar. So everybody follow so far? Okay, good. And so that entity becomes our limited partner. So the general partner is the person who runs, or the corporation that will run the day-to-day operation of the development. And then your limited partner would be this investor. And the reason they come in as a limited partner is you're not just selling them the credits. In order for them to get the tax benefit, they have to be within the partnership. So even though you're the general partner or the entity that we create or is the general partner, the general partner typically only owns 0.01% of the entire development at the end of the day. And the limited partner owns 99.99% of the development. And although they are still very limited, I mean, there's a partnership agreement that's a few hundred pages that spells out what they can do, what you can do. You're the operating partner as the general partner. And they provide this equity. But that's the tax shelter side of that business. So are there any questions with regard to the funding? Okay, good. So that's the vast majority of any of these developments. It's the sale of these tax credits. Typically, there are other sources, and if you recall, when we went through the pie chart at the last meeting, the vast majority is equity, but then there are other things like a first mortgage, there's debt, and then there's some soft financing pieces that go in there, or debt that isn't serviced, as well as grant money from the state, the federal government, and potentially the town. And so that's the sources and how it sort of comes to develop affordable housing. Does that make sense?
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Council Santos.
Thank you, Mr. President. Regarding all the figures, the numbers you've given us, does this relate to 2 stories being built or 3 stories?
So the scenario that I presented last time is a 3-story structure. If it were a 2-story structure, it would be about 10% more from a cost perspective. And
All right.
we'd have to find those funds.
The reason why I'm bringing that up is if the councilors do remember, the council voted that we would build a 2-story senior housing facility, not 3. There is a memo on file, and I tried to download it today, but I was out of the house today and I couldn't. But the council voted for 2 stories and not 3. Does anybody remember that?
I didn't think we finished that vote.
I
I
think
could
we
be
did.
wrong. I could be wrong, but I didn't think that discussion closed. I thought
I
it
could be wrong,
moved.
just like I could have been wrong on the Oliphant School land, but I was right.
But you could be right. You could be right. The way I remember it was that conversation had not concluded. Does
Well-
anybody else remember?
Well, let's do this. Let's make that part of the conversation this evening, and then we'll come to a conclusion. Frank, let me ask you this.
Certainly.
Can we put 40 units, and it's going to be 40 units, correct?
Yes, that was my next point, is that I think
Okay.
that if you were going to, I think the market study and everything else points to 40 units. So I think that should be the first thing that you sort of determine, that you're going to build 40 units at this site.
Okay, can we put 40 units into 2 stories? I think you sort of, if my recollection is correct, you kind of alluded to that was a possibility last time. Is that correct? Can we put 40 units into a 2-story footprint?
Yes, if you recall the drawings that I don't know if we want to put them up on the screen from the presentation from last time. There was both a 3-story and a 2-story version. And it is my recollection that we were continuing this discussion so that you could all determine whether you wanted a 2-story or a 3-story building. And the conclusion was that you can fit 40 units in a two-story structure, it just takes up much more of the site. It's much tighter. You don't have as much parking. But it can be done. I mean, obviously, if we had more room, if we could take part of the ball field or shift things around, you could make it a lot more comfortable, but you can do it.
Council Santos?
All right, ballpark. If you were to take a portion of that ballpark, they would have to move down further to the, what am I looking at? To the east. And Mr. Brown can correct me if I'm wrong. If they do that, move back further, they are going into the Colonial Danes property, which at one time was part of Whitehall. All right, I know I'm showing my age, but Mr. Brown, if you can correct me.
We don't believe you were with the Colonial Danes, so.
Oh, I
You-
I don't know about that.
The Colonial Dames are, have the property north and east of the baseball field. That is correct.
So they cannot move, that ball field cannot move down further.
I think you could. You'd have to have a conversation with the Dames.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Vice President?
Thanks, Bob, Mr. President. So Frank, does it have to be 40 units in this particular spot? And I asked that because I went out there tonight before I came here and I drove in by the ball field parking lot and just looked at it. And I'm looking at 2 stories. I'm trying to envision, we talked about maybe going in the ground a little bit if we could because of the costs associated with a 2-story versus a 3-story. And I just couldn't vision it. I just can't vision a 3-story building fitting into that neighborhood. I just can't. I'm all for this initiative. But does it have to be 40 units in that particular one spot?
The technical answer is probably no. I think that the size of the project that you want to present to Rhode Island Housing is at least 40 units. Anything less than that makes it very infeasible.
So Frank, what if it was 40 units or more in 2 different spots, but to go 2 stories in that area and not crowded as much with as many buildings or as much space, I should say, would that be more attractive of a permit? I mean, it's still one initiative. It's
Yeah,
just
it's one
in a couple
financing.
different areas.
Right. It is one financing
Right.
scheme. However, when you've already added cost by staying at 2 stories and now you're going to spread out to 2 different sites. So now you've got 2 different utility connections, all the different site work. Now you've got, instead of 4 walls, you've got 8 walls to build. It just exponentially changes the cost, I think, in 2 different locations.
Yeah, and I understand that, but we plan to do that anyway. So, if we're going to make it right, in my opinion, and make it fit into the neighborhood, what's the difference whether we do that now with that cost or we do it down the road, which would be more costly as things escalate in price? You know what the price of lumber is now.
Yeah. I mean, I think I'm grateful that I'm not in your seat, that I need to walk a line between what I think is good for a neighborhood and what makes sense. I said, from my seat, I think I can only recommend to you the most efficient way to produce this affordable housing. And the most efficient way to do it on that site is to do 3 stories and 40 units.
Okay.
What you decide beyond that is really your decision. And I think it's the most fundable to do 3 stories because it's the most cost effective. So I think there are trade-offs, and I think we need to just determine what the real priorities are in this initiative. If the goal is to truly build the most efficient, I'd rather see the money go into amenities for the residents rather than spread it out and put more concrete in another site. If you have the same dollars, I'd rather make the apartments nicer for the people living there. I mean, if you look at the gym right now on the front of that site is pretty much a 3-story building. So we're not really adding to that. I mean, obviously, whatever you vote, I will follow. But that would be my recommendation.
So,
Also-
sorry.
Council Von Villas?
Yes.
We'll get you next, Mr. Flynn.
Thank you. Do I remember, sorry. At the last meeting, do I remember you talking about the fact that not every project is going to be funded by the state? And that we have to be careful that we are the most attractive of all of the submissions if we want to get funded? That was the thing that concerned me, that if it doesn't fit into what the state thinks is best, and I know we don't always like what the state likes, but that's beside the point. The point is, if the state is coming up with the money and they're only going to fund a certain number of projects, don't we have to be sure that we do the best in fitting their expectations so that we get funded?
Yes. In fact, Ms. Von Villas, I think that I think the example I used at the last meeting was that I have a development in another community in the state that we presented last year to Rhode Island Housing, and Rhode Island Housing didn't fund it. And they gave us all this feedback, and we basically had to shrink the building a lot and make it much more compatible to their points, because it's a point system. And however many projects get the most points with the money that's left, that's who gets funded. And typically, it's anywhere from 3 to 4 developments a year. And in this year's round that they're funding now, in fact, I had an interview this morning for a project. They have 11 applications and they'll probably fund 3. So it's my recommendation that we make it as competitive as we can so that we do get funded. Because it can be a really pretty picture that we think will fit into a neighborhood, but if it never gets built, that's all it is a pretty picture.
Council Flynn?
Oh, thank you, Mr. President. I was wondering if we could get on the screen from the original PowerPoint, the 2 aerial views with where you see 2 roofs and you see 3 roofs. Do you know the ones I'm referring to, Frank?
I do.
I just think that would give us, a picture's worth 1,000 words. And I think that would give some perspective also to those who are watching, because believe it or not, the 2-story from the air just looks like it's taking up so much space on our land. And, it's closer to the neighbor's property line. It has all of those efficiencies that will be looked at very carefully by Rhode Island Housing. And, I know that at first, 3 stories does sound daunting, but I think we talked about this a couple meetings ago, maybe in the spring, COVID's kind of a blur, but about camouflaging buildings. You put some 90-foot tree plantings down there, or you create gable roof lines. There's a lot of ways to make it appear like it's taking up less space in the neighborhood. I just want to be open-minded to creative architecture and just make sure that everyone knows what they're getting into. 2 stories, if it's up to the people, if that's what they want, but it really does push towards that back boundary line, property line quite a bit.
Frank, quick question. Do you have a page the IT can reference? to pull
Yeah,
up?
I actually am just, that's what I'm pulling it up right now. So if I can, I'm hoping, I think I can share my screen and then I'll
No, that'd be great.
pull it up if I can, if that works.
Sorry for the interruption.
No, that's perfectly fine.
Uh,
It's like, I think it's 173 and 174, 172, 173 page of the
So,
PowerPoint that I'm looking at.
so can you see this?
Yes.
Yes.
So this is the two-story. Oh, you know what? This is the old one, but this is the two-story version right here. And the two-story version has all three of these roofs. And when you go to the three-story version, it actually shrinks it down to these front two. So we get rid of this back building and it makes it much more efficient. And let me see if I can find that.
And if I can just jump in, not only does it make it efficient, but beyond that, but you also retain, land area, which, is a water absorber. We're always worried about stormwater runoff, and the more impervious we add to our landscape, the worse that situation can be made. So it gives some nice green space for, the residents on all sides to consider, which is an additional benefit.
Let me try to find that other one now, which is the latest and greatest. Okay, here it is.
And Paul, I want to thank you for going over there tonight and taking a look at that, being on site. I think a site visit's really important for everybody. And to note that gym, if that's the one in the front, is close to the 3 stories. And I'd still like to put on the table discussion about preserving the image for historical and sentimental reasons.
Okay, I think I have it now. So I'm going to share that. Here we are. So, sorry, it took me a minute for that. So again, here is the 2-story version that has those roof lines. And just to compare, this is the 3-story version, which allows for a much more comfortable circulation and even some overflow parking if you wanted, but additional green space where that third structure was going to be built. I think that the big concern has always been parking here. I mean, I've been there on the mornings when there's a ball game going, and I can only imagine that, and if the senior center has some activities and then a ball game, you'd have a lot of parking requirements. So,
Right, you have a square foot difference, footprint difference
yes, it is in this corner, so I have to,
that you can share with everybody.
yep.
Mr. President?
Yeah, I got a few people.
Okay, I was just gonna say as an observation, if people could just look at the two buildings and how it does not encroach on the neighbors. As Terry was saying, when you spread this out, you are pushing up against the borders more. So just something to look at there.
So in each case, so this is the 2-story building and it's 36,000 square feet on 2 floors. And then the 3-story is also 36,000 feet, but it's on 3 floors.
But as
I was asking, what was the footprint on the property difference?
Oh, the total footprint.
Yeah, the difference in the footprint of the 3-story compared to the difference in the footprint of the 2-story.
I'd have to do some math for that.
Okay, while you're doing the math, Council Ward,
Third less.
question?
Yes. Thank you, Mr. President. And I think just ballpark for everybody, if 2 stories is 36,000. So if each building were 12, then if you put all of them in 2 squares, it would be 24,000 square feet ballpark.
There you go.
My question was, probably shouldn't go here, but Paul is thinking like I'm thinking. And personally, I certainly understand the efficiency, and it's not just in the upfront cost of 3 stories over 2, but every year thereafter. I appreciate that. But I am concerned that 3 stories on that site is just gonna be too tall. So Paul got at another site, maybe instead of 40 units total with 2 sites, it was 50 or 60, because we need to add to the number anyway beyond this project. So is that ever been talked about? That's my first question. And the second one is for Frank. You said 11 applications. They'll probably fund 3 this year. So we're not even in this round, right? We would be for next year.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. And that's typical. They're usually between 9 and 12 a year. And some it takes 3 or 4 times. I just completed a development in Barrington, and it took 4 applications, 4 years just to get the funding. So we just need to, be prepared for that. And that's why I'm really stressing the fact that we should make this as fundable a project as possible at the outset. I mean, if you wanted to go 2 stories, if that's really important, I'm probably gonna shoot myself in the foot right now by saying, why not take the whole ball field and relocate it somewhere else, and then you can spread the buildings a little bit. You can make this site a whole lot more comfortable if it's really a priority.
Mr. Vice President, did you want to make a comment?
Yes, Mr. President, thank you. So Frank, if you could pull the 3-story building,
I'll go back to that.
conceptual drawing up.
Yep.
So, or either one of these, I guess, it doesn't matter. So that 3-story is saying up front, I understand what you're saying, and Terry and Dennis, I understand what you're saying about, being closer to the property line with the neighbors. And I get that part of it. But neither one of these drawings show the gym if it's to be preserved. Is that accurate?
That is correct.
So in either case, the 3-story is going to be back further anyway. And
I believe it starts pretty much where the gym is right now. That would be the front wall of the structure. Pretty close.
Okay.
Pretty close to that.
So Frank, you said earlier that the what is the roof? What is the height of a 3-story building? Is that 40 feet? I mean, what would the peak be? Because I'm always trying to put myself in the neighbors. If I live next door to this thing, potentially, what am I looking at? And is it going to be aesthetically pleasing to me or not? I mean, you can camouflage all you want, but 3 stories is 3 stories.
Right. I think it would be.
So what's the difference?
45 to 50 feet. 45 to 50 feet.
What is it right now?
2 stories.
I couldn't tell you what the gym is right now, but I mean, we could get that answer.
It's not 45 to 50. I can give you that answer.
The 35, 40?
I don't even think it's 35.
Peaked pretty good.
Well,
I can go, I think we have an aerial as the first picture here. Do we have an aerial of the site? So this is the 2-story versus 3-story building next to the senior center. So you can sort of get a perspective view of it. And when you think about in terms of how far the nearest residence is, I mean, the nearest residence is almost 200 feet from where this would be. It would be a whole lot closer where in the back corner where if it were the 2-story building, but the 3-story structure, it would be probably about 200 feet at least to the nearest residence.
So does anybody know what the, what zoning's allowed out there height-wise? Would the town have to ask itself for a variance?
If I may answer,
Okay,
so this permitting would fall under the comprehensive permit process,
okay.
which is expedited zoning and planning, and it all goes through the planning board. And because it's affordable housing, it's one-stop shopping, and the planning board has the ability to create waivers, and the state statute calls them waivers versus variances. So waivers from your side yards, from your height, from your density, from all of those things, because you're creating affordable housing in a community that has less than 10% affordable housing.
Wow. That's pretty good.
And the statute is, if anybody cares, it's 4553, which is the affordable housing statute.
Mr. President,
Council Flynn.
I wasn't sure if you could see my hand
I
up. so
cannot.
Okay. So Frank, what is the inventory of these buildings, of the 40 units, as far as 2-bedroom, 1-bedroom studios?
So the market study talked about the predominant need for 1-bedroom units. So these buildings are each showing 36 1s and 4 2s, no studios.
Are studios frowned upon in the application process?
They're not frowned upon, but from a marketing standpoint, they're much less desirable. And I think, they are certainly more efficient to build, but it's not as quality a housing unit to having a separate bedroom from a living area.
And did I see the floor plans did actually include laundry potential?
So there are typical right here. So these are typical floor plans. So I'd rather move over. I don't know if by me moving all the photos, if that helps. But in the 1-bedroom unit, there is a laundry, and the 2-bedroom as well. There is a laundry.
I think that's a especially with COVID, I think that's a good planning ahead.
Yeah, and especially when you're talking about seniors, schlepping your laundry basket to a central laundry facility or having to leave the building doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
Vice President.
Sean, we're always talking, or we talk sporadically, I should say, about, capacity for sewer and water. Now, I'm assuming that this would go down to either Paradise or Wave Avenue, adding 40 units. Are we prepared to do that?
That was one of the first things that Frank and the engineer looked at, and they signed off that we have sewer capacity as well as water capacity after their meeting with Julia Forge in Newport. So utilities are not an issue at this location.
Will this change our rates with Newport, with the amount of flow going there? Additional flow, it's a lot of, between laundry and flushing and stuff like that. It's all going through my mind.
There'll be more flow, yes.
Well, I know that. I'm asking, do you know if it will change the rates, and how does that absorbed? How is that rate absorbed?
So there would be an increased charge from the city of Newport to operate the plant. And you would have more flow. I'm just thinking through the rate calculation.
And I'm sure you're not
In
prepared for
theory,
that.
the people in the units would have a rate they'd have to pay. So for everybody in town, it should be neutral. It's just that those people would have an addition, there would be new bills.
If you could take that down, I'd appreciate it. So we have visibility to all the councils,
Oh,
Yeah.
take it down, sorry.
please. Thank you. Council Welch.
Thank you, Mr. President. Sorry, Frank, I was going to ask you about the floor plan, but we don't need to see it. And I'm just questioning from a senior standpoint, and maybe this is just a run-of-the-mill floor print, but it shows tubs as opposed to shower stalls.
Right.
And senior-wise,
So,
is the best.
yeah, I think that roll-in, walk-in showers are much better from a design standpoint. We would, I think I asked the architect to provide some typical floor plans and they provided these, but yes, those could easily be showers and in fact.
Thank you.
Yes.
Okay. Frank, if you want to continue.
Yeah, I wasn't prepared to talk about the 2 to 3 stories yet, but I know everybody wanted to jump on that. The next, I was just talking about scheduling, and I think that we really need to make a decision by the end of this month if you're planning on being in a position to have a development partner on board and be at the December Rhode Island housing application date. So from a schedule standpoint, we would need some sort of a decision. And I hate to say this, but maybe there's another location that you would prefer to see this. If 3 stories isn't right here, maybe it's right somewhere else. If we had to have 2 different sites, then maybe we can do that or think about that. But the schedule, to keep our schedule for a December application, I think we really needed a decision within the next couple of weeks.
Frank, realistically, that's why we're here tonight.
Yes.
And hopefully we can bring this to a conclusion. However, to reset the time, to go back and look at another site and redo plans, I mean, it's been quite a venture, to say the least, to get to where we are now. And you and I both know from what I've looked into this, and correct me if I'm wrong, we're not going to get it this year anyways. If we get it in now, we'll be fortunate to get it next year. But if we don't get it in this year, we must have forget next year.
I would say that's right.
Is that a fair statement?
That's a fair statement. And I really think that it's important. I love this site because of the senior center. I think that we're having the senior center right on site gets us a lot of points, but from a practical standpoint, the residents going to be living here, it makes it so much better. And I think it'll make the senior center better too, because you'll have these 40 residents that can volunteer, can take advantage of the services they offer. And I think that it makes that whole little area really vital for the residents and the senior center.
Yeah, I would concur. I think it makes it extremely attractive for anyone that wants to move into there, to have the senior center right there on site. I'm gonna pause for a minute. We have some people that want to talk. I think it's time to hear from some of them, and then we can revisit this conversation. Rita Finn. Rita, are you there? Hi, Rita. If you
Can
could
you hear me? Can you hear me?
name and address, Rita. Yes, we can. Thank you.
Rita Finn, 209 Corey Lane, Whitehall Farms, right behind the proposed senior center. And I just would like to know if any thought has gone into the impact that it would have on the Whitehall Farms community right behind it.
Rita, do you foresee any direct impact?
Well, a couple of things about the senior center. I think it's a great idea. I love that it's there. But I'm thinking if you have residents there, they're going to need transportation. And this is really a residential community. And I know there's no bus stop that goes down past the senior center. So that's something to think about. I'm also concerned about the encroachment on what we call our swales that butt right up against that senior center and ballpark, mainly the ballpark. And we own the land that's adjacent to the east side of that, of the ballpark. So I know for a fact that that ballpark cannot move in any direction. I also worry about the hearing about waivers that might come up and change actually what we're hearing about and that what might happen in the future. I'm just going down a list of these questions I was noting as we were going through. We're also involved in working on the Madeford River project with the Aquidneck Land Trust, and that water flow, overflow, or whatever the impact would have to the surface area of the senior center residents going in. I mean, it's a lot of things to think about before we make a final decision of any kind. And I know that you have to go through the process of getting the applications in, but I would really like to have all of those things considered by the town council before anything would be done permanently, and have the impact of the effect of that on the surrounding areas, the traffic, the residential development across the street, et cetera. There's a lot.
There certainly is. Thank you, Rita.
Thank you for listening. I appreciate it. Good luck.
Chris Green, Chris? Hi, Chris.
I have to unmute myself. Can you hear me now?
Name and address. Thanks, Chris.
Christopher Green, 516 Corey Lane, also Whitehall Farm. I am the president of the executive board of directors for Whitehall Farm. And I'm also a former baseball coach and had a lot of involvement, a lot of time spent on Berkeley Peckham baseball field, and wondering when we were hitting home runs over the right field fence onto that big field down there, if those people minded. Well, now I'm sitting here looking at that big field as part of our property. And as Councilor Santos mentioned, the Colonial Dames, in my understanding, leased the baseball field land to the town for, maybe this is an old rumors, but for $1 a year for like 999 years, similar to the agreement they have with Whitehall Farm Museum and some properties that the Colonial Dames are also involved with on the other side of Whitehall Farm. So I'm just expressing my concern. We do have two areas of our land that are very close to the ball field. And since that's a good distance away from the buildings, it doesn't matter so much from that. I know that the park that was proposed is on existing green land that's there. I mean, that's mowed by the town weekly. So that's not taking any more property, and certainly wouldn't come over our property line any more than it already is. But we do have a significant drainage problem, which we're going to have to address. And we are largely downhill from some of that area. I'm in the 500s, which is the closest to the seat where the proposed senior center would be. And I'm on the high part. Everything else runs downhill from there. So, you know, there's a lot to be considered. I'd like to see more studies in that. I mean, personally speaking, I really don't like the idea of a 3-story building there. But that's just my personal opinion. I look at the senior center directly from the back of my residence, and I look across 2 other properties to see it. But there's there's times when I look at the flag to see which way the wind's coming. So we are concerned here I know our executive board is aware of this, as some of our residents have also, maybe even be in the waiting room now. I don't know, but just to let you know, we're concerned. We'd like to see more about it. I'm very surprised that this is brought to us within a couple of weeks of Mr. Spinello wishing to have a decision of some sort to move forward. But I understand the process. So thank you for your time, and good luck with this. And we will be watching to see how this progresses.
Thank you, Chris.
Yes.
Arlene, call. Arlene?
She has to raise her hand, Bob. She hasn't raised her hand. She tends not to follow rules. All right, she's gonna unmute. Arlene, you have to unmute.
*6, Arlene. Press *6. Okay, we can come back to Arlene. We can come back to Arlene. Ronald Augustus. Ronald, are you there? Ron, can you hear us?
Yeah,
All right, great.
yeah, so thanks for letting me speak tonight. I mean, my name is Ron Augustus. The owner.
Address, Ron? Address,
What's that?
please. Your address, please.
Yep, and I'm resident at 57 Berkeley Court, which
Thank you, Ron.
is the property in the back corner. I've lived here on and off 60 years, you know, starting back when Berkeley Peckham School was the Middletowns High School. So I've seen that facility over the years turned into things all the way through in the Child and Family Services was there. My family owned this house this whole time. The first thing is that the 3 stories, there's no other 3-story building here. And, you know, I got to disagree with Mr. Spinello there, because when he mentioned that, I looked out my window and it's not that high. I mean, a 3-story building is a lot higher than that. If you look at the school itself, it's a 2-story building with a flat roof. And if you look at the gym right next to it, it's basically a roof maybe a little bit higher than a normal 2-story building, but it's a little bit higher, but it's not as high as a 3-story building will be over there. And I think the 3 stories is just going to be too out of place for this area. You know, I mean, with the Corey's Farm behind us, they had all those buildings are only 2 stories high, and they fit fine across the street. All those buildings are all 2 stories. A 3-story building is definitely going to be out of place. The other thing is the baseball field with only 30 parking spaces now. What are you going to, the parking is going to be a disaster over there on the weekends. Like I said, I've been here forever. I've watched that field on weekends. There's plenty of games going on. I mean, most of I see how you guys, we all play down there, and you see the parking. Where are those people going to park? You know, we're at a dead end street that I'm at there. It's probably one of the options. They can't park on Green and Avenue. So are they going to park on Berkeley Court? I mean, we got special needs kids over here and stuff like that. I think that would be an issue. And then just by eliminating all that parking space on the weekends over there, sometimes, you know, there's quite a few cars that they park in the back parking lot here by the senior center. And they're going to eliminate all that to those people. So what's going to be the option? Where those people are going to park? I think that's going to be a huge problem, because I don't believe those games and stuff over there is a problem. I don't think we've ever had many issues with things going on, eruptions or any disruptions over there. We had to call the police and stuff into it, maybe 1 or 2, but most of the time it's well run. Everybody has a good time down there. You know, it doesn't bother the neighbors. So I just think that's a huge issue. supporting senior housing. I like the senior housing. The plan you have to make it exclusively senior housing. I mean, you even got stuff coming up in 10 years about putting in owner occupied housing over there. That's not something that I could accept and be willing to support with you guys. And the last thing was a lot of the neighbors around here didn't get the mailing for this thing until today. I don't know when you guys mailed it out. I got mine on Saturday. But if you've been reading the papers and stuff, I work for the Postal Service. I know how bad it is now with the new postmaster. They delayed a lot of stuff, so things get a lot of delayed later. So I'm not sure if everybody in the neighborhood that was in the limit received this mailing. So that might be an issue with it, people coming up. You might be hearing some things after with that. But other than that, like I said, it was 100%, elderly housing, 2 stories. I support this thing 100%. It'd be a nice place for them because I think the neighborhood's great for elderly people and stuff like that over here. All the neighbors and stuff would truly support it and probably become a lot of friends with those people, But when you get to 3 stories and not exclusively for senior housing, I can't support that. But thank you very much.
Thank you, Ronald.
Thanks, Ron.
Danielle McCarthy. Danielle? Danielle McCarthy.
They have to unmute.
That's that demon shot.
Okay, I see Dan Elshon. He's one on here too. Dan, go ahead if you're ready. Unmute. Dan Elshon, *6. Daniel, if you can hear us, Daniel Elshon, *6. Okay. Is Danielle McCarthy, does she have her hand up?
It's the same, they're together, Bob.
They're together? Okay.
Yes.
Okay. I got the notifications as 2 separate people.
Okay.
Okay, let's try Arlene Cole again. Arlene, are you there? *6. Arlene,
Am I in, Bob?
you're in. Okay,
Okay,
name and address, please.
Arlene Cole, but I'm really calling as the senior director because that's where my concern is right now, not
All
as,
right, that's fine.
okay. Looking at the proposal, and I've seen it a few times, my concern is there were to be amenities done to the senior center. Where is the area for that? How will that be accomplished with the 2 proposals that are being displayed?
Frank, can you answer that question?
Certainly. Hi, Arlene, how are you?
I'm good, thanks, Frank.
So in the numbers that we've run, we're proposing that we spend some money renovating the senior center as well. And so that's part of the program, that we would renovate the senior center as part of this development.
I understand that, but you're talking about the same footprint, or we were talking about expanding the senior center? What type of renovations? I don't think we discussed that, but I thought in my mind when it was first talked about that there was going to be an addition to that senior center. Because if you're having that 40 extra people in there with the 700 and some members, which don't come all the time, but that's pretty tight space in there.
Mr. President. So,
Go ahead, Frank.
when we first met, I was proposing a new senior center, and you said your senior center was perfect as far as the square footage and the size. So we hadn't planned on adding to it. If we could build a new senior center, I think it could be a whole lot more efficient and have more space and allow for a much better design of the entire site. But that structure, I think, is a pretty nice structure and really holds that corner well, and has a great presence there. And I think if we renovate it and bring it back, then it would really shine. And I don't.
Well, Frank, I believe you were talking about a gym. When you said, I said that's perfect. Yes, we love where we are. We love our location and we love that building. But if we're increasing membership, which we try to do every single year to serve more residents, elderly residents in the community, and now with this, you told me dream big, Arlene. So I'm doing that. And in doing so, I can't see what type of, you're talking about renovations, interior renovations, the building is quite nice inside. It's been very, very well maintained throughout the years. So I would think, and no, I'm not excited about moving, absolutely not, because that's a perfect place for the seniors to come in from all areas of the community safely. We're not on West Main Road, we're not on East Main Road. We're in a very safe, beautiful area. And we utilize, as you know, we put a gazebo out there, we put a walking park out there, we put a garden out there. We've done a lot of amenities for the enjoyment of our seniors. And yes, I think it's fabulous. That was in our mind when we first saw that building go vacant and the New Vision children left, that we would really be able to serve seniors well. We'd be able to provide wonderful services for them in senior housing. But when I look at the layout, I'm scratching my head at this point.
Okay. Thank you, Arlene. Daniel Elshon? Dan Elshon? *6, Dan, if you can hear us. Okay, let's go back to some council discussion. Any councilors want to jump in on anything? Or Frank, do you want to finish up with what your presentation?
If I may.
Yes, go ahead.
I can address a couple of the comments.
Okay.
I think the folks from Whitehall, it seemed had some competing concerns, and one was height. I think that we've heard that that's part of what you're discussing tonight is the height of the building, whether it's 3 stories or 2 stories. And then, but with drainage as well. So if you have a drainage concern, the reasoning would be that you'd want as much open space as possible so that you could create a much better drainage system or an easier drainage system. We're required by state and federal law that we can't dump any more water than is currently dumped off the site. So any new construction, we'd have to have a 0 net runoff from drainage. So whether it's 2 stories or 3 stories, that would have to be the case. I just think it's more challenging when you have a bigger building, bigger footprint, but that would be a requirement no matter what, that we could not produce more drainage than is currently leaving the site. The parking versus the baseball, yeah, that's again, an argument for a smaller footprint and more parking. So those were my two comments back. And as far as the thoughts on the senior center and the director, that as well, the less footprint we have, the more area there is for outside other space, or even if you wanted to expand the senior center. I mean, we hadn't explored that expansion of the senior center yet, but it could be certainly a possibility.
Okay. Any other follow-up, Frank? Council Flynn? You're muted, Council Flynn.
Thank you, Mr. President. I had 4 notes jotted down throughout the conversation. First of all, so a mailing did go out to the residents, to the neighbors, the abutters. Does anyone know if that's a true statement?
It is true. It went out on the 4th.
Went out on the 4th.
Okay, so that's great. That was one of my follow-up questions. I thought it was important that we make sure that we got everybody, as much as possible here tonight. Question maybe for Frank. Will this project also have to prepare what I see in a lot of other development plans, something called an impact statement that would address a lot of different topics and have them on file for the neighbors and the population to take a look at? Is that going to be a requirement, or could that be produced?
So as part of the planning process and subdivision, we'd still have to follow the subdivision regulations. So if that's a requirement of the subdivision, which I believe it is, there has to be a fiscal impact statement, yes.
Not just fiscal, traffic, environmental.
If the planning board asks for those sort of studies, we'd have to perform them, yes.
It may be something to think about just for our population, to have that on file so everyone knows that they were considered. And I know you just commented about that by law, the property is not allowed to have any additional drainage leave the boundaries of the property than what leave it right now. But perhaps in the design and whatnot, there may be an opportunity to actually reduce that drainage, and that could be a benefit to the neighbors also. I just wanted to throw that out there as you're talking to your architects and whatnot. And lastly, so I'm just wondering if, I'm always looking for compromises for win-wins. What if we did the 2-story, which seems to be, embraced by all, but we did like 2.5 buildings, or, we expanded each of the 2, instead of going all 3. I know it might reduce the units, but it would keep it from that back property line. Maybe consider doing some studios or less 2 bedrooms so that we'd get, 33 or so units. I'm just not sure how far outside the box we can think along those lines to make it, a neighborhood, a welcome in the neighborhood.
If I may address, Mr. President.
Go right ahead, Frank.
So if the council voted that this is going to be a 2-story building, we would still make it the most efficient 2-story building we could make it, and make it a site that it would work, one, and that you'd all be very proud of. Because that's the goal here, to serve the residents of the town and make it really a showpiece. And get it funded.
Thank you.
I'm starting to like you, Frank.
Council Santos. You're muted, Council Santos. You're muted. There you go.
Sorry. I apologize for disappearing. I lost electricity. I don't know why. A few minutes ago. The 3 stories versus the 2 stories. I've talked to some of the neighbors, and they are totally against the 3 stories. I've talked to some of my senior friends, and the 3 stories I hate to tell you what they called it, but I'm going to tell you. They are calling it the senior barracks. Okay? They think it looks like a prison. Can this design be made more attractive than looking like a prison or barracks? And the other thing I am concerned about is the building, the sketch that you are showing 3 separate buildings. Does that do away with the auditorium in the front of the building?
Yes.
It does.
I mean, it could be incorporated as the front facade. We could replicate that, but in both these scenarios, they are new structures.
Well, the majority of the neighbors in the area don't want a 3-story building. They don't think it would add to the area. You're taking away part of the area. And also, I agree with Mrs. Call that it is not, the senior center is not on the east or west main road. It is in a nice area. And to do away with the senior center and put it elsewhere, I would totally vote against it.
I would agree with that. It's in the right spot.
Any other councils want to make any comments?
Oh,
Councilor Toronto. I'll come right back to you, Mrs. Santos.
thank
Thank
you.
you, Mr. President. Just being on the committee, just a couple of things that we did discuss, and a lot of this is 2 or 3 buildings. Or 2 or 3 stories. It was a conversation, and we were concerned about the congestion in the area. Obviously, we asked Frank to give us, the best scenario, and he did. He gave us the 3 stories with 40 units. It was a great what we asked for, just to see what it would look like. It wasn't meaning we were going to do it. And the whole time we were looking at maybe 20 to 30 units and then having a second location. That was kind of where our discussions were. And so, can we do 40? Would that neighborhood take 3 stories? I will say it's going to be a nice building. I mean, this is not, it's not going to be a barracks. It's going to be a beautiful building. This is something the town is going to be proud of wherever they build it. This is a service that the town is committing to, which we haven't committed to in a long time. We are going to need change. I know everyone doesn't like change, but we need to address affordable housing for seniors, okay? This spot has been picked by everybody. It's unanimous that this is what we want to do with this building. It hasn't been used in years. To me, when I go inside that building, it's a problem. We need to do something with this building. Either put senior housing in here or close the doors, because it is hurting. So we've got to make a decision if we want to get in the game and get consideration. So we have to decide, are we going to do a 2-story with 30 units? Or are we going to do 3 stories with 40 units, or 2 stories with 40 units? But we have to make a decision.
Thank you. Councilor Santos.
Frank,
Yeah.
how many bedrooms in each of the apartments? How many 2 bedrooms versus 1 bedroom?
So of the 40 units, there are 36 1-bedrooms and 4 2-bedrooms.
Bedrooms, okay. Going back to what Mr. Toronto said, I did not call it a barracks. The seniors did. They called the sketch that they looked at as barracks, and they would not live there. These are seniors who are talking, Dennis. They want a place that, even though they may be living in their own home, they want to go to a nice looking spot that sort of reminds them of their homes, not barracks.
Councilor Toronto, please, let's not go back and forth.
Oh, no, I just want to mention, again, the committee put a lot of time into this. And this is going to be, again, this is something we want to do for the seniors. I was talking to Arlene Call today about this. He says it's country living. I said, it's awesome. We're going to give our seniors country living. Okay? I mean, this is a prime piece of real estate that the town is committing towards senior housing. If we can't figure it out here, I'm sitting here going, if we can't figure it out here.
We're
I don't
gonna
know.
figure it out. It's been in the pipeline long enough.
I don't think we could find a better spot.
We're gonna figure it
Or
out.
the quality of living that our seniors deserve and probably want.
Frank, I'm gonna ask you a question. In about 2 minutes, I'm gonna make a motion, then we can discuss a motion, okay? Frank?
Sure.
Conversation you and I had, the planning costs, including into the architecture, engineering through the end of the year, you and I had a conversation, we're talking roughly $200,000?
Somewhere in there. I would get proposals from the architect and the engineer, but yeah, approximately $200,000,
Okay. All right. I'm gonna make a motion.
which
Okay,
would
this
get
is,
reimbursed
right, we got that, Frank.
out of the
We got
project.
that.
Yeah, yeah,
We
yeah.
got that. We got that. I'm gonna make a motion, which will be open for conversation. But we have to move along with this. This has been in the pipeline since April of 2018. And even before that.
How
So-
about 2016, Mr.
Okay,
President?
let me finish, Council Santos, please. I'm gonna make a motion that we approve the designing and engineering a 40-unit, two-story complex, two-story. The construction to be as efficient as possible, to include the renovation or replacement of the senior center. And that we authorize FJS, Frank Spinella's agency, to begin the planning process, get this thing going. We authorize him to prepare the solicitation for the development partners. We need a partner with this. We have to reach out. One that'll provide a $0 land lease to the developer, including funding necessary to renovate or rebuild the senior center if that is the most efficient. We have to get this ball going. That's my motion. Is there a second? And then we'll have conversation. Okay.
Second.
Okay. Vice President, you want to make a comment?
I would never support taking down the senior center. Never. Never support that. I don't think it's right that all the money that's gone into that building from the CDBG grants over the years, and that building's in good shape. I mean,
Well, I don't think it's, Mr. Vice President, if I could interrupt, I don't think that's.
you're
what's
open,
gonna
but
happen.
you're opening the door, and I don't like that as part of that motion. That's not, we didn't come to, I didn't come to
Okay.
talk about a replacement of the senior center tonight. I came to talk about discussion of affordable housing. And
Okay,
whether
I can amend that motion. I mean, I
And to-
feel the same way. After talking to Frank, Frank sold me on the fact that the senior center was in great shape. He thought it was worth our while keeping.
Yeah, I just,
If that's the feeling,
that's my feeling. I
I'm
can't
just,
speak
I'm
for
just trying to get this going so that we can come back.
Yeah.
and we can start the process. If we do not start this process, we can forget 2022. We can forget it. We're not even gonna be involved in it. Mr. Vice President.
Yeah, I agree with you, Bob. We need to get going on this, but certainly wasn't prepared to
All right, let me amend my
talk about
motion.
replacement of a senior center.
All right, then I'll amend my motion
Okay,
to keep the current senior center. After talking to Frank, that's the way I feel. I mean,
okay.
Frank sold me on that. He said it's well worth keeping. And you're right, we've put a lot of money into it. We have. So that would be my motion, and it's been seconded. Now, do you want to repeat it again?
Yes.
Councilor Santos,
I was going to second that,
Okay.
but go ahead.
Councilor Flynn?
Yes, could you repeat the motion now?
Oh,
with the
yeah,
change?
absolutely.
A really
Okay.
long motion and with
All
a
right,
lot of
all right,
different parts.
I'll go nice and slow.
Well, you might have to break it up because,
Okay, let me break it down into segments.
okay.
First part, approve designing and engineering of a 40-unit, two-story senior housing complex. Next next portion. Construction to be as efficient as possible, to include any renovations to the senior center if necessary. Authorize FJS to begin the planning process. Give him the nod. Authorize FJS to prepare the solicitation for development partners to go into this with us. He has to go out and solicit the partners. And to provide a $0 land lease to the developer. So part of his solicitation will be $0 land lease to the developer. And I think that just about covers it. We leave the senior center alone as is. But if we need some money to help do a little renovations, there'll be money there to help. Go ahead, Council Flynn.
So can you explain the $0 land lease to the developer?
Frank,
Just wanted to make sure I wasn't on mute. Yes, so we're suggesting that that be the town's commitment, that the town would solicit a development partner and then provide the land at zero cost to that developer, whether it's in a 99-year land lease or not, but we wouldn't charge them for building our housing.
Okay,
Councilor Toronto. Oh, go ahead, Councilor Flynn, you got some more?
I do.
Okay.
So in your motion, you're selecting the 40 units in the 2-story configuration that goes right up to the property line in the back. Is that true?
That would be true. I think we have to go 40 units. That's my belief. That's my motion. And we got the perfect site there. Everybody's in line with the site. I mean, you couldn't ask for a better site. And I'll tell you something, if these are things that should have been thought about way before tonight, and these have been in the process in the pipeline for a long time, let me just answer your question. I feel that it is not conducive to that neighborhood to go 3 stories. I really don't. I've gotten phone calls from people up there. I don't think they want a 3-story unit up there, and I can concur with them. It might be more efficient, but I can concur with them. They have to live next to it, and we have to respect their wishes. And so, yes, it would be a 40-unit complex, 2 stories. And it would go, they'll try to make the footprint as small as possible.
Can Frank input on that? I think he had something to add.
Go ahead, Frank.
Yeah, Mr. President and Councilman. The design will ultimately be the most efficient it can be. If I'm given the direction of a 2-story building and 40 units, we're gonna try to make it as efficient as it can be on that site. So it might be tweaked from the exact location. If you recall, our first charge was to see what the maximum could fit on the site. And then we've sort of honed it down based on the market study. So now we're at the point where we can actually get into real engineering and real design and come up with a plan, if given the direction that meets your criteria. So I think that you'll see this get better.
Councilor Flynn.
So might it not go all the way back to the property line in the back? Is that what you're potentially implying, Frank? Or it may not be 3 roofs, it may be 2 roofs of a little bit larger buildings, but still 2 stories, what we were sort of alluding to earlier? Okay.
Yes.
So there's some flex there from
Yeah.
what we're seeing right now. Let's see. Okay, those are my questions. Thank you for clarifying.
Thank you, Councilor Flynn. I lost track. Councilor Toronto, did you want to make a comment?
Yeah, just a couple of things real quick. Frank, as we discussed on the subcommittee, after the 15 years, the property is going to retransfer, correct? Or it's going to be subbed out again?
So the
Am I
tax credit, yes, the tax credit program requires that it be, because it's a 10-year tax credit, but has to live for 15 years. The partnership has to live. After the 15 years, the limited partner wants out, regardless of what happens. So in almost every case, we refinance those and get a new limited partner and do moderate rehabilitation in 15 years, new siding, new roof, new windows, those sort of things. And bring in a new limited partner and infuse more capital. The beauty of that, at the life of that, we can set up the partnership agreement that at the end of the 15 years, the general partner, and we're getting a little bit into the weeds, but the general partner and the land lessor, you can dictate sort of how that happens.
Right. That's what I wanted to talk to you about. I don't think we have to make that decision today, but the town needs to be protected on that. I know we spent some time on that.
And that's down the street.
What happens, we got to protect the town and our ownership of the building.
Absolutely.
Okay. So I just wanted to mention that. And Bob, thanks for making the motion. I agree. I think this is, we've been at this. We've learned a lot in the subcommittee. I want to thank all the members of the subcommittee. We've met on Fridays for months. I think this is something that, when we started meeting, people always kept coming up to me, Bob, saying, well, why did we wait so long to even start doing something like this? So, I know it's taking time, but there's been a lot of hard work going into this. And COVID didn't help us, because if we didn't have COVID, we wouldn't have had to sideline this project and the survey that we wanted to do before we made any other decisions. So I appreciate making the motion, and I'm hoping we can make a decision tonight.
Thank you. Vice President, you want to make a comment?
Thank you, Mr. President. So, Frank, I just want to be clear on the $1 lease. It's a lease. We're not turning that land over to the developer, correct?
It's however you structure it. If you say it's a lease, then it's a lease, and we would set it up. I'm sure Mr. Regan would structure the document such that you would have control.
Yes, I would only support if the town controls the property. The second thing is, you talked about after 15 years, the initial investors wants his money back, right? So, and then you refinance and you find new investors. Who is responsible for the maintenance of these buildings?
So in every case, there is a management company, and whether it's a third-party manager, which is typically what happens in a deal like this, that you would go out with a request for proposals for a management company to run it on a day-to-day basis. Who they would do the lease up, they would whenever a resident moved in or moved out, they would operate the building, pay the bills, maintain it. And that may be one of the criteria for a development partner, because some of the agencies and for-profits and nonprofits have their own management companies. So sometimes they do it in-house, and sometimes they have a third-party property manager run the project. But it would be someone who knows low-income housing tax credit rentals as well.
And so, having said that, if there is a third party, and you said most cases there are, how do Middletown residents, do they get priority for this housing?
So now you've got
Let's go in the weeds.
This is the weeds. I mean, this
All
is,
right.
You've got a fine line to walk when you're talking about fair housing and equal opportunity, because you can't preclude someone from moving in should they come from out of town. You can set a priority in marketing locally only at the beginning, but then you would need to, you'd have to have an outreach at some point if you're not full. And so I think that you could make it a priority for residents, but you can't stop someone from coming in from somewhere else.
So then what's the purpose of doing it? We're trying to get our residents housing. Middletown residents, not residents from out of Middletown residents. I understand what you're saying, but to me, that's, I find it hard to believe other communities don't do it.
It's the funding restrictions.
I understand that, but I find it hard to believe that other communities don't prioritize or make sure the residents get in there first. I mean, why are we creating affordable housing for Middletown if Middletown residents aren't the priority? Or don't have first crack at it? It doesn't make any sense to me.
You can create it so that there is a priority given to local marketing. And so, and we can get into that.
Okay.
But I think you do have to walk that fine line, and you can't prevent somebody from moving into town.
Councilor Toronto.
Thank you, Mr. President. Paul, we talked a little bit about that, and it is, the key was marketing. So we need to market this, get our seniors in Middletown who want to get into this building and have them occupy it. But what he's saying is, if all of a sudden we advertise it and we market it and we only get 30 people who want to move in and there's 10 open, you've got to open it up. You can't just let them sit there vacant.
I think I can understand that, Dennis. Thank you.
Okay. So I was just saying that's kind of how I understood it to be.
Okay.
I'm not sure if I'm right, but I think I'm close.
That's what I heard.
Councilor Flynn.
Okay,
And I
thank
just want to add that this won't be the sole project. I think that there will be more after this. I think that there's a long-term plan to do more of this and have more offerings, and not just for seniors.
All right, staying on topic with the motion. Councilor Welch.
Thank you, Mr. President. A couple of things. One is, do we still have oversight on the end look at, because as far as the discussion tonight, whether the gym stays as a facade or is part of the building or all that is, we haven't decided. So we're not tying our hands there, Frank?
Is that a question for me?
Yes.
Okay, sorry. So I think that you're gonna get looks throughout the process. I think I've worked very closely with this group and Mr. Brown in particular, and I think that we're going to be pretty open about the process. I don't see any other option. So if there's something that you vote on tonight and something becomes problematic for that reason, we'd have to come back regardless. But I think that we would want the town buy-in, because we ultimately have to go to the planning board. And if the council's not in support of something we present to the planning board, that would be disastrous for everyone.
Okay.
Councilor Welch.
Two more things. Thank you. And maybe you weren't perfectly clear, but what I heard was in 15 years, we would do some maintenance that might be siding, roof, or windows. And if that is the material you're using, I'm a little suspect that it's only going to last that long.
So it's not a matter of lasting. This is one of those great federal programs that require renovation. There's a building in North Providence that I just completed the third renovation. Second renovation. So we renovated it. It was built in the early 80s. Then we renovated in the mid 90s, and we just finished renovating again because the program requires us to spend a certain number of dollars per unit on the renovation, which triggers the 4% tax credits. What we would build it with is 9% tax credits, and then you refinance it with 4% tax credits. So it has nothing to do with the materials. It really has to do with the program requirements.
Okay, I won't pretend to understand that, but
I know.
when you get rid of those windows, let me know. And lastly, in your pie chart under uses, I'm sorry it took so long to ask this, but I'm a little confused by the $500,000 acquisition piece. Does that mean that?
Yeah, that's changed. That's changed because we just agreed on the $0.
Thank you.
Councilor Santos.
Okay, this piggybacks what Mr. Welch just said about the renovations. Now, I'm going to ask a question, which this has been a bad subject for me, and I wish we could get it changed. when you finish tonight, you're going to present us with a new set of drawings. Am I correct with that? Or do we have them already? That's to you, Frank.
Okay, so thank you, Ms. Santos. So I think what will happen is if you give me the direction tonight to move ahead, then we would really get into the weeds with the engineering and the architects and come up with a real plan, because these are all schematic drawings based on a site plan. We've done some preliminary investigation, but we would get into we would do borings to see where the best siting is, where the drainage can be, and where, the sewer tie-ins and the water tie-ins and the gas tie-ins, because we know that comes from the back road. So all those things would happen next, and then we would come back with a further developed plan. Yes.
Okay, my second part, the engineers and the architects, are they part of your firm?
They are not part of my firm.
Now, do you go out to bid to get these gentlemen or ladies? And do you go for the lowest bidder or the highest bidder? Or the one who's going to do the best job?
So it's been my experience to get the professionals that do the best job, and understand the programs within which we are working, as well as the municipalities. And when we solicited proposals from an architect and an engineer, certainly the engineering firm has worked within your town before and worked for your town. Horsley Witten Group, who I think are one of the best I've worked with recently, as well as Union Studio Architects, who have designed a lot of housing throughout the country. So I think that we, and they're both based in Rhode Island. So
my last question then, when you finally go out to bid to construct this, do you pick the lowest bidder or the one that's going to do the job for the least amount of money? Or do you pick the one that's going to do the best job?
So I think that would really be a decision that the team with the development partner would make. So if you chose a development partner that had their own construction company, that would be one consideration. If their process is, and these would be some of the criteria in which you would select a development partner. Would they use local firms? Would they use people who know this Rhode Island housing's methods? Are they big companies, small companies? Are they committing to using local labor, which we like in a lot of developments? We like to solicit local subcontractors. And I'd like to see a general contractor solicit contracts from local subcontractors as well. So those would all be considerations at the time with the development partner in place.
And would the council be the ones who pick the construction company?
I can honestly say probably not. It would probably be the development partner who would take the development and have to sign guarantees. So there are 3 guarantees that all the investor syndicators, the people who buy the tax credit, the limited partners, require from a general partner. And those are the construction completion guarantee, which say if it's not built on time or on budget, that they'll make up the difference. Then there's the lease up guarantee, which means if they don't rent it to qualified residents, then they will make up the difference. And then there's the operating deficit guarantee, which says that if the operating expenses that we set in the budget cost more to operate the building, then they'll also make up that difference. So with those guarantees comes some ability to choose who you're hiring to do the development. And I think that they would probably have that final decision, although we can request that you have input on who they choose ultimately.
Thank you very much for answering my question.
Okay. Counselor Toronto. You're muted.
Sorry about that. Thank you, Mr. President. I just wanted to thank Frank for being on our team. All those things he's sharing with us. I mean, our heads were spinning when you told us that the first time, and I'm hearing it again, and my head's spinning again. So that's why we brought you on, to keep us rowing in the right direction. And I want to thank Sean too, because I know you've been working closely with Sean, and we look forward to this program going forward. So thanks for your time tonight.
All right, thank you. Okay, we have a motion. It's been seconded. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Do we have anybody opposed? Counselor Walsh, was that an aye? We caught you at the end. Were you in favor of the motion?
Yes, as being the last one, yes.
Okay, thank you. All right. Thank you, everyone. This is the start of the end. Okay, and I want to thank you. And Frank, you know you're going to be, you've been charged with. We
Yes,
look
sir.
forward to this. You certainly have the history. And Mrs. Santos, projects like this are heavily scrutinized, and I'm sure that it's going to be done. It's going to get done right, and we appreciate everybody's effort. Councilor Flynn.
Just a quick question, especially for those watching. What is the next time that we will see something on this project, and what will that be, Frank?
I would
So you
think
get your
that,
marching orders, the work starts now.
right, I would think that when we have a final building design, we would come back to you to just give us the nod to say, yes, go to the planning board.
And that time frame ish, we
Uh,
might look forward to that, and the folks,
90 days,
Roughly,
roughly.
is
roughly.
that enough time
Thank
to
you.
make the December
Thank you.
application?
I'm sorry?
Frank, is that enough time to make the application deadline in December?
It depends on how long and protracted the planning process is. I can tell you that in a development that we are in the queue for funding for this year, we combined master plan and preliminary at the planning board level because it was also a town sort of backed project, and it was done in one meeting for those two steps. So if it can go very quickly. The public process sometimes doesn't go as quickly as we hope. So I can't.
All
answer-
speculation, right, Frank?
I
All
can't answer that.
speculation.
I just wonder if we could get some sort of check-in in 45 days, just to see if you're on track and what's going on.
I can certainly do that.
That would be great. I'd
Okay,
appreciate that. Thank you.
Mr. Brown.
I would just say on the monthly report that I provide the council, I speak to Frank the week before the end of the month, and have included a project update with each of the submissions that you've received.
Okay,
Thank you, Sean.
again, Councilor Toronto.
All right, I got it. I'm gonna, not this evening, but Terry, I think something that can keep going. As Sean said, we get an update on a monthly basis where we're at. But I also just want to put out there, Frank, if there's other things we can be doing during this time, because, we talked about a number of things of talking with the residents. We've got to get out and start educating people. What other steps can we be doing along the way to make sure that we're going to stay up? Do we educate zoning a little bit more? Do we educate people just so that when we get to critical parts, we don't bog down on that critical path? So if there are other things we can be doing, I'd like to maybe you can work with Sean on that and get that on our to-do list.
I will do that. Yeah, Mr. Brown and I will get back to you on that.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
Mr. Vice President.
I think what we should be doing is start looking at the next phase. That's what we should be doing.
For a different agenda.
Yep.
Okay, Mr. Vice President.
Okay, motion to adjourn. Thank you, everybody.
Second.
Motion second, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank
Night,
you.
everybody.
Good night.